You know what time it is? That's right. It's 7 here in the town that I live in, 7 a.m. And that means that chime is going to go off every time. Time to start learning Japanese. So I'm halfway to being fluent in Japanese. But what does that even mean? So there's a lot of different ways you could look at this. Like you could say that, it takes 3 years of study to become fluent, so 1.5 years equals halfway or something like that. Or you could be like, 3,000 hours of studying Japanese and you'll be fluent, so half of that. But what I'd say is like I'm halfway capable of doing what I need to with Japanese. Like fluency, you're fully capable of doing what you need to do, basically. So one website I used a lot for like learning how to study Japanese basically was JapaneseLevelUp.com. This isn't a paid promotion or anything, although I did technically write a couple articles for that site, but no affiliation. So they have a scale for Japanese level, and it's basically levels, so 1 to 65, where 65 is fluent and 1 is basically nothing. And I'd say I'm about level 39 there, which means that I'm proficient, but I'm just on the cusp of being at an advanced level with Japanese. Of course, whether or not I'm actually halfway to fluency is up to you. You'll be able to get more of a feel for what my level is over the course of this video. So either you'll say, he's basically halfway fluent, or you can be like, he know nothing. All right, kiddies, gather round, and let Papa Andrew tell you the story of how he learned Japanese. Well, it all started back in 2014. I was a young lad of 19 years of age, and during this time I happened across a very particularly interesting piece of media. Now, this was called an anime, which anime, of course, you all know means that it's cartoons coming from Japan. Now, I quite liked this anime, but I couldn't help but notice something very interesting. It was all in Japanese. I know, I couldn't believe it either. Now, old Papa Andrew, he's not going to be watching something and have some mysterious language he can't understand. So I thought, by Joe, I'll learn Japanese. And so I started my journey. Now, I was in university at the time, and of course, learning a language, the natural thing to do would be to join a Japanese class. And so that's exactly what I didn't do. I probably would have, but you see, this semester had already started and I couldn't join the classes very well then, now could I? So, what was old Papa Andrew going to do? Well, I'll tell you, self-study. That's the key words here, friends. Yes, self-study is the key. Now, typical learning of the language in a classroom can be all well and good, but if you want to get really good, you probably need to do some self-studying. Now, in school, I had taken 6 years of German. 6 years of German. And you know what? At the end of it all, I was kaput. You see, after about 3 years of taking the language, you really start to stagnate in your ability. You study grammar points and vocab for a particular test, but then you move on and forget them for the next test because you don't even need them for the next test. So of course, you'll forget. Now, I began my self-study journey, and about 8 months later, I went to Japan. I was able to go to Japan because it was a summer semester with my university. Now, during this time, of course, there were the other students that had actually been studying in the real Japanese classes. and they came along on this trip as well, so I got to compare my level, and I have to admit, I was better than them. Now, not by a huge amount, but by a noticeable amount. In the same time period, actually even less, I had learned more on my own than with the classes. That's a very interesting thing. Alright, enough of that. So anyway, my time in Japan, I was there 5 weeks, and I took classes there, of course, and they weren't really the typical kind of classes you would take, actually. It was more about learning how to speak and learning different grammar things and stuff. It was quite useful, but overall, I think my level of Japanese was about the same level of going up as it was outside, honestly. So just being in Japan didn't like boost my level a whole heck of a lot or anything. And so I got fairly steady progress beyond that. I started taking regular Japanese classes in my university after that, now that I had caught up. But they weren't really too relevant. They helped me learn some things. I wrote down a lot of kanji and stuff, but it wasn't so impactful to my overall experience. Now, since I started studying in September of 2014, that means I'm getting real close to 4 years. So you'd think I would be a lot better than I am right now, honestly. I certainly hoped I would have been a lot better. But main reason I haven't is because I got real complacent with my level of Japanese. Like, I got to a proficient level, which is pretty solid. As a matter of fact, I would say that I was probably the best person at Japanese at my university. Granted, there weren't that many people taking it. And there was even one girl who I'd say was probably a lot better of a speaker than me, but like overall, I think I had the best level. So I got really complacent. Yeah, and so basically, even though I've been studying about 4 years, I'd say for about a year of that, I was pretty stagnant overall. So naturally, coming over to Japan and working in the country, obviously I'm going to get better at Japanese. And I've certainly been making some pretty steady progress, finally, on Japanese since coming over here, particularly with speaking. But after being here a few months, I definitely felt that I should be making much more progress than I had. So I really started to up my game in studying lately. So the main content of this video I really want to have is to show you what I'm doing to study right now, and I think that should be particularly helpful to people watching this that are also learning. It all comes back to anime, doesn't it? I think most people that are interested in Japan have an interest in anime. That's at least how a lot of people start to learn about it. But there's a problem. See, if you enjoy anime, that's all well and good. But if you want to learn Japanese, and you're in the know, then you know that you can't use subtitles. English subtitles are no good for learning Japanese language. Now, you can learn things, but very slowly. See, you're having to process 2 languages at the same time, and that's not easy. And you're probably just going to end up ignoring the Japanese anyway and just retain the knowledge of the subtitles. But boy oh boy, when you turn off those subtitles, you are in for pain. This is your burden to bear. It is so hard to peel away those subtitles because when you do, then you're only understanding like 1% of what's going on, and it sucks. That show you liked so much, now you don't even understand it. What kind of torture is this? Now, of course, you're going to be doing actual studying, like from a textbook or something like that, going over vocab and stuff. But you need the immersion so that the stuff that you're studying comes up in anime or whatever, that you get that sort of feedback to where you actually see the words being used. And it's really effective for learning. Now, being in Japan, I have the amazing resource of Netflix, which has a completely different library because I'm in Japan, so it has tons of anime to watch. Now, fun fact, by the way, when I was in Japan in 2015, they didn't even have Netflix over here, so I couldn't even watch anything. Now, with Netflix Japan, you get the amazing addition of Japanese subtitles, which is really helpful because I'm much better at reading than listening. But I like to switch back and forth between the subtitles and not having anything because I want to actually practice my listening. So they're useful, of course, but I don't want to always have them on so I can get used to how things sound. Now, this anime in particular is called Samurai Champloo, and I'd say I understand maybe about 50% of it or something right now, assuming I at least have the subtitles on or whatever. That always helps. Welcome to the wonderful world of manga. Now, manga, of course, is Japanese comics, and this is really where I get my immersion. See, reading is awesome. Sure, you've got the difficult kanji characters, but manga are great in that they have furigana, which is little characters that tell you how to say the kanji. So that's all really nice. Now, reading through these, when you start out, it's really tough. Now, this is Yotsuba, which is about the easiest manga you can find out there. It's great for a beginner. When I first started reading this, it was such a struggle. Like, I would just, like, slowly read each one of the letters one at a time. Like, right here, do, u, shi, ta, na, ni. And it was painful. It was painful. Even words I should have known, like konnichiwa or something, I couldn't even recognize them because I just read so slowly. But you know, reading through the whole book, it was a pain, but by the end I got like 3 times faster at reading the characters. Even if I didn't understand what they were actually saying, I could actually phonetically read it, so that was nice. So over the years, I've just continued to read more of these. I read stuff like Shingeki no Kyojin, which is pretty cool, but really complicated. It's got like military stuff going on. It's all quite difficult, but I keep my persistence up. Like, I am currently rereading these chapters because I read them before when I was a much lower level, and I like understood nothing. It's like I'm reading them for the first time now because I can actually understand things a whole lot more. So yeah, right now I ideally at least try to read a chapter a day if I can. It's kind of tough. I'll be constantly looking up stuff in a dictionary, but it's fun. Speaking of dictionaries, here's one you should really know about if you're learning Japanese. Jisho. It's so useful for looking up anything. It'll give you endless variations on sushi and so on. But you know, as part of me trying to up my game, I'm really at a turning point in my studies. Now I try to use Goo. Goo, of course, is a Japanese dictionary. So if I just switch over my writing so that I do Japanese, now instead I can look up sushi like this. So let's look up sushi. Oh, of course. Now it all makes sense. Now it's really a struggle to use a Japanese dictionary, but it is, after a certain point, you get good enough to where it really helps if you're actually understanding it from the language that you're learning, rather than keep putting stuff back into English. It's honestly a better, faster way once you're good enough with the language. And let's not forget video games. See, when you get to my level, you really need to be doing everything you can in the language. So I got this cheap old N64 from a used place here in Japan. There's plenty of online games and stuff that you can play as well, so it's not like you have to be in Japan. But it's a great way of having to constantly deal with the language if you're playing the entire game in that. So it's another fun way of learning. See, by this point that I am at, I wouldn't say I'm studying Japanese as much as I'm just using it. One nice little thing I try to do is always read NHK News Easy. I should hopefully be good enough to where I can move on to regular news rather than the easy news, but for now this is quite good. They have a few stories every day, and they're really quite nice because, again, they tell you how to read all the characters, and they even come up with Japanese definitions. Yeah, see, so now you can see that kansuru is yoyaku nado o torikesu koto. So you probably maybe know that it actually means cancel, but they don't necessarily know that. So anyway, that's a nice way of reinforcing the language. You thought I was crazy when I said that you have to use a Japanese dictionary, but hey, look, this is what like kids would use to read the news, and they have Japanese definitions. They understand it fine. And let's not forget good old Anki. This is a card-based study method where you have all these cards, and basically you study them every day, and if you know the card, then you can say, hey, I know that, and they'll say, okay, maybe 5 days from now you'll see that card again. And basically you keep if you know a card, it keeps getting pushed further and further into the future until you need to study it again, until you basically have cards that won't come up for years, and it's great. So like if I look at what I'm doing right now, basically if I know what the word is, then I will say that it's need to see it again, or it's too hard, or it's good, or it's easy, and those are the days. And of course the definition, this is the word I'm trying to learn, is all in Japanese. So again, gotta have Japanese, everything Japanese, Japanese all the time, Japanese, more Japanese. That's how you learn Japanese, is Japanese, Japanese. I mentioned this site before, but the cards I mainly use are from Japanese Level Up, and they're basically all too amazing for learning the language. It's all complete for you. You unfortunately need to buy them for a good price, but they're definitely worthwhile. And let's not forget YouTube. I only really watch one Japanese YouTuber, but he more than suffices. This guy's called Hajime Shacho. And basically, he just makes crazy videos like every day. And I don't even know what this is going to be. And they're really nice practice. And here's the moment you've all been waiting for. My secret weapon. Well, as of now. It's become really useful. Whoa. Look at this. Look at this baby. It's a Japanese grammar book. As you might have guessed, all in Japanese. So if you want to know how you use certain words and sentences, then there it is. Like if you want to learn, here it's konai, then it'll give you example sentences and an explanation as well. Like you can see those sentences are numbered like 3, 4, 5. And it's just so useful. Even as I can only barely understand a lot of the definitions and sentences, like only half understanding or whatever, it's so useful because it just is such a comprehensive guide of everything. I'm just literally reading through this thing page by page, and it's so useful. Like I've literally only gotten like 70 pages into this. By the time I get to the end, I'm gonna know a whole heck of a lot, that's for sure. And I'll have to read it again, too, after that, when I actually can understand the definitions and things they're giving. You could just look up a regular thing, like if you need to know what suni iru, how you use that, then that's useful as well. You know, since coming to Japan, I realized that, you know, I've been traveling around and doing some stuff, but I realized what I really need is better Japanese, because the daily life here just gets so greatly uplifted if you know Japanese. The people I know, I can actually try to have conversations with them. Like, a typical week, I might go to the local restaurant and talk with some guys, and we're innately limited in what we're able to talk about by my own ability. So I've gotten a lot better at speaking since I've been here, but it needs way more in there. So I want to get better at speaking. And listening too, for that matter, because if I can't understand what they're saying, it's kind of hard to have a conversation. That's why I've actually started to listen to podcasts as well. That's a really good way of listening to more natural Japanese. I'll admit, anime isn't exactly how people talk in Japan. So it's just a way to like have the language be here, and it's like, understand me. At the end of the day, my real advice for learning the language is that you gotta be real with it. Like, I was the best at Japanese at my university, but at the end of the day, I still sucked. Like, I wasn't fluent. Come on now. You gotta know what is making you learn the language and what is not. Like, so much of the time, I just completely avoided learning grammar and just let that slide over me, thinking that I could just get by with vocab, really. Like, I learned the grammar, but I didn't actually retain what I learned, basically. I never tried to compare and like find examples of sentences and try to understand sentences. I would just constantly just sort of breeze by things. Like I said, I read some of those chapters of Shingeki no Kyojin, but I was just like breezing by it, not really trying to understand it. And like many times doing my Anki cards, I'm just sort of like, yeah, okay, I kind of know that word, sure, fine, it's good. I didn't try to like understand the language. Like, you really gotta actually try to learn it, basically. Like, if you're spending the time looking at an anime and not having subtitles, pay attention. Like, don't sort of just get lost in the visuals or something, or just really be like, yeah, they're saying stuff, I occasionally understand stuff. Really try to understand things. You know more than you think you know, basically. And you're not going to know more as well unless you actually try to figure out in your mind. It's like you're constantly trying to assemble a puzzle, but the only way you can do that is if you puzzle out in your mind. So, get good. Yeah, you just have to constantly challenge yourself. Like, I read through that manga even though I hardly understood it, but at the end you triumph because you're better. That's all that matters, really. Just keep doing things that you think would only make sense if you were a higher level. Like, I started reading that grammar book before I could hardly understand any of it. Like, I'm not learning the grammar. I'm trying to learn the words that are trying to help me learn the grammar. Like, you just have to keep pushing, and you'll get better. And also, the more time you spend, the faster you'll learn. Like, if you spend a lot of time just letting things go by, then you'll eventually forget things and have to relearn them. You keep having to forget and relearn. Like, that's what I was doing for so long. But if you keep studying, then you'll just keep building rather than keep having to rebuild, Nihongo. Learning Japanese is a challenge. But, things in life that are worthwhile take a lot of effort. And learning Japanese is definitely worthwhile. Japanese may even be the hardest language to learn as an English learner. But you know what? I'm not learning Italian because I have no reason to. But I have every reason to learn Japanese. So therefore, learning Japanese for me is easier than learning Italian because I actually have a reason to. And I'm not good at learning languages. I don't really think so. I mean, everyone is good at learning languages because everyone can use a language, right? It's just a matter of learning another one. But the only way you learn it is if it becomes a part of your life. So, yeah, do that.